At my son's birthday, my mother-in-law piled every single gift in front of my sister-in-law and said, "These will be safer with Sarah. She knows how to appreciate family." For a second, the room went quiet, except for the faint squeak of balloons brushing against each other above our heads. My hand tightened around the plastic fork I was holding. I smiled like nothing had happened, like I didn't just watch my 7-year-old's presents disappear in a colorful avalanche of paper and ribbons. My son looked at me, wide-eyed, still clutching the cheap toy car I had bought myself because I didn't trust his grandmother to remember. His lip trembled. I nodded at him, calm, almost casual, while inside my chest, something cracked. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't even stand up. I just watched. What no one at that table knew was that my silence wasn't surrender. It was a choice. And that choice would change the entire mood of the party within the hour. The truth is, I should have seen it coming. My gut told me something was off the moment we walked into the little banquet room at the family restaurant. You know that sticky sweetness of buttercream frosting in the air? The squeals of kids chasing each other between tables? The kind of scene that should feel warm and ordinary? For me, it already felt tilted, like a picture frame hung slightly crooked on the wall. When my mother-in-law called 2 weeks ago, her voice was honey over ice. "Don't worry about a thing. I'll take care of everything. All you need to do is show up with the birthday boy." The last time she took care of everything, my husband and I ended up sitting at the kids' table at Christmas while she toasted Sarah's new job like it was the birth of the Messiah. But I convinced myself this time would be different. It was my son's 7th birthday. Surely, even she wouldn't turn that into another stage for Sarah. I dressed him in his favorite blue shirt, the one with the tiny dinosaurs marching across the chest, and packed an extra sweater in case the restaurant blasted the air conditioning too cold. He had been counting down the days, crossing them off his wall calendar with a red marker. When we pulled up to the restaurant, he bounced in his seat, chanting, "Cake, cake, cake." I wanted so badly for it to be just that simple. The room was decorated, balloons, streamers, a lopsided banner that read "Happy Birthday, Jason." My husband carried the cake box to the back table, while I adjusted the party hats on a cluster of impatient cousins. Everyone looked normal enough at first. My dad-in-law sipping soda, Sarah in a glittery dress, even though it was a kids' party, relatives unwrapping utensils from their napkins. But when I caught my mother-in-law's glance, that familiar spark flickered behind her smile. It wasn't joy. It was calculation. Still, the first half hour went fine. Jason blew out his candles in one puff, cheeks pink from effort. People clapped. Phones flashed. I let myself exhale. For a second, I thought maybe I'd been paranoid. Then came the presents. She didn't just accidentally hand one gift to the wrong person. She orchestrated it. Box after box, bag after bag, she scooped them up from the gift table and stacked them neatly in front of Sarah. "Here, you open this one," she cooed, like Sarah was the star of the show. Sarah giggled, actually giggled, tearing through the wrapping paper like a kid at Christmas, while Jason sat frozen in his chair. Someone whispered, "Isn't this Jason's day?" I heard it. My mother-in-law heard it too. She straightened her shoulders and said loud enough for everyone to catch, "Oh, don't be silly. These are family gifts. We all share. And Sarah knows how to represent us. Represent us." As if my 7-year-old needed a spokesperson, I wanted to grab every ribbon and box back, to slam my hands on the table and shout, "This is his birthday!" But instead, I took a sip of water so cold it burned down my throat and stayed seated. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jason shifted in his chair, his small fingers tightening around that toy car until his knuckles went white. No one else moved. My husband kept his eyes down, fiddling with a napkin like it might explain why his mother just erased our son from his own party. The relatives smiled nervously, pretending not to notice. Sarah beamed under the attention, her bracelets clinking as she tore another bow. And me? I just smiled back. I smiled so wide it hurt my cheeks. Because while everyone thought I was swallowing humiliation again, I was already planning. I leaned toward the server when he came to refill drinks, slipped my card across the tray, and whispered, "Put the whole bill under her name. Every plate, every soda, every slice of cake, all of it. He blinked once, then nodded like he couldn't wait to see how this played out. From then on, I didn't hear the paper ripping or the fake compliments anymore. I just heard the countdown in my head. 10 minutes until dessert platus. 20 until the bill. 30 until silence. And when that silence came, it was going to echo louder than any shout I could have managed. The room looked almost perfect at first glance. Gold balloons hovered against the ceiling tiles, streamers twisted like candy ribbons, and the smell of grilled chicken mixed with frosting in the air. It was exactly the kind of cheerful chaos you'd expect from a children's birthday party. A cluster of cousins darted between tables, their sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The cake sat at the far end, a white box stamped with the bakery's logo, waiting like a crown jewel to be revealed. I had told myself, over and over, that today would be different, that my son would finally get the spotlight, no interruptions, no sudden speeches about Sarah's new promotion or her latest vacation photos. I even rehearsed in my head the smile I would wear for the family pictures, the one that looked calm enough to pass as genuine. When we walked in, people actually greeted us warmly. My father-in-law waved from his seat near the drinks cooler, raising his cup of soda like he was at a football game. Cousins rushed toward Jason with balloons, chanting his name. For a moment, I felt the tightness in my chest loosen. Maybe, just maybe, this party could be about him. Jason's eyes sparkled. He tugged at my sleeve, whispering, "Mom, look! They came for me." His voice was half disbelief, half joy. I brushed his hair back and kissed the top of his head. "Of course they did, sweetheart. It's your day." I caught sight of Sarah then, gliding into the room in a shimmering dress that caught every strand of light. It was a children's party, but she looked ready for a cocktail gala. She air-kissed my mother-in-law, who beamed like royalty had arrived. My stomach tightened again, but I smoothed the wrinkles from Jason's shirt and told myself not to overthink. "Where should we sit?" I asked. My mother-in-law gestured toward the far side of the table. "Anywhere is fine, dear. Just make sure Sarah and I are in the middle so everyone can see us." She said it with that sugar-sweet smile she saves for when she's really issuing an order. We settled in. Plates clattered, juice boxes hissed open, and kids compared their temporary tattoos. Jason sat proudly at the head of the table, swinging his legs under the chair, humming to himself as if music bubbled up from his chest. He was glowing. I wanted to freeze that moment. The sound of cousins singing off-key, the smell of pizza slices cooling on paper plates, the faint stickiness of frosting already smeared on the tablecloth. This was what I had hoped for, a bubble of simple, ordinary joy. The cake came out next. 7 candles. Jason squeezed his eyes shut and made a wish so long people started laughing, urging him to blow them out before the wax melted. He did it in one puff, his cheeks ballooning, his chest rising like a hero in a cartoon. Everyone clapped. Cameras flashed. I clapped too, blinking back the sting in my eyes. I thought that was the peak. That from here on, it would just be laughter, sugar highs, and wrapping paper flying. But there were hints, if I look back now. Tiny cracks in the surface. The way my mother-in-law's hand lingered on the gift table, rearranging boxes, tapping the bows as if she was sorting them. The way Sarah sat angled toward her, whispering, both of them laughing softly while glancing my way. The way my husband cleared his throat whenever I caught his eye, as if begging me not to say anything. Still, I swallowed it down. This was my son's party. I wouldn't ruin it by being paranoid. Jason leaned toward me, whispering, "Do you think Grandma got me the Lego set?" He had circled it in the toy catalog for weeks, tracing the spaceship with his finger like it was a secret treasure map. I kissed his cheek. "Maybe. We'll see soon." Soon, the presents were next. And that was when the air shifted, just slightly at first, like the hush before a storm. My mother-in-law clapped her hands. "All right, time for gifts." She didn't even glance at Jason. She went straight to the table, scooping up the first brightly wrapped box. That crooked picture frame feeling came rushing back, only sharper this time. I told myself to breathe, to smile, to just let it play out. But in my gut, I knew. The storm was about to break. The storm didn't start that day. It had been building for years, a slow drip of favoritism and quiet humiliations that wore me down drop by drop. By the time the first gift landed in Sarah's lap, I already carried the weight of every slight that came before. I remember the first time I realized where I stood in this family. It was my very first Christmas with them, years ago, when I was still glowing with the naive excitement of being newly married. I had carefully picked out presents for everyone, wrapped them in gold paper, tied with satin ribbons. When the moment came, my mother-in-law handed Sarah a velvet box holding diamond studs. For me, a pair of thick wool socks, the kind that came in a multi-pack from the discount store. "Practical," she said, smiling. "You'll need them in winter." Everyone laughed politely. I laughed too, cheeks burning. Then there was the summer cookout. I had spent the morning marinating chicken, setting up the patio, running back and forth with trays of lemonade. When guests arrived, my mother-in-law raised her glass and announced, "Let's toast to Sarah. She just started her new job." The applause drowned out any thanks for the meal. My husband patted my hand under the table, like that was enough consolation. But the one that cut deepest was my own birthday. I wasn't expecting a parade, just maybe a cake or a kind word. Instead, my mother-in-law stood in the middle of the room, clinking her glass. "Everyone, I have wonderful news. Sarah is pregnant." Gasps, cheers, hugs. I sat in the corner, my name barely remembered on the card that came with a store-bought cupcake. Each time, I told myself it was just a coincidence, just bad timing. Families stumble. Mothers-in-law don't always realize how sharp their words can be. But the pattern kept repeating, etched deeper each year. Sarah, the golden child of the in-laws, could do no wrong. She was praised for every achievement, from buying a new blender to landing a mid-level promotion. My mother-in-law called her the pride of the family. Meanwhile, I was the background character, the extra in the film of their lives. My efforts, no matter how steady or essential, melted into invisibility. And the irony? Sarah wasn't even subtle about it. She leaned into the role, smiling sweetly while basking in attention. I don't blame her entirely. Who wouldn't accept being treated like royalty? But it hurt watching her soak it in, while I quietly swept up crumbs at the end of every party. I used to think if I worked harder, they would notice. If I cooked the perfect meal, if I remembered every birthday, if I lent money without complaint, maybe they would finally see me. Instead, all I did was prove I could be relied on, the dependable shadow propping up their stage. Even Jason wasn't immune. Last year, at his 6th birthday, my mother-in-law handed Sarah's daughter the first slice of cake. "She's older, she should get it first," she said, like my son didn't even exist. Jason's smile faltered, but he was too little to protest. I told myself I wouldn't let it happen again. And yet, here we were. The resentment didn't grow in sharp bursts. It layered slowly, like dust on furniture you stop noticing, until one day you run your hand across it and choke. Every holiday, every family gathering, another film of dust settled, and I let it. I smiled. I nodded. I swallowed it all because my husband begged me not to make things harder. But the truth is, I wasn't imagining it. My gut was right every time. The way my mother-in-law angled her body away from me in photos, pulling Sarah in close. The way she used the word family, like it was a velvet rope at a nightclub I was barely allowed inside. The way she praised Sarah's parenting in front of me, while ignoring how I worked double shifts to keep a roof over my child's head. I think what hurt most was how normal it became. I stopped being surprised. I stopped hoping. I started bracing myself before every event, preparing to be invisible. That's why, when the gifts began migrating towards Sarah, my face didn't betray me. I had already practiced that mask for years, but Jason hadn't. His little face was unguarded, his confusion raw and unfiltered. Watching his grandmother stack gift after gift in front of his aunt, I saw a reflection of my own childhood disappointments forming in his eyes. That was the moment I decided something had to change. All the past humiliations, the Christmas socks, the overshadowed birthdays, the toasts that erased my efforts, every single one condensed into that instant. My son's hands gripping his toy car, my smile stretched thin, my mother-in-law's voice carrying across the room like a gavel, and in that silence, I knew. This wasn't just another slight to endure. This was the last straw. The moment started like a performance. My mother-in-law rose from her seat, clapped her hands lightly, and announced, "Time for gifts!" Her voice carried through the small banquet room, cutting over the chatter like the ring of a bell. Everyone's heads turned. Jason's cheeks flushed with excitement. He bounced a little in his chair, craning his neck toward the colorful pile stacked on the table. The lights seemed brighter then, glaring against the metallic wrapping paper. The scent of sugar and pizza crust hung in the air, mingling with the faint perfume my sister-in-law always wore, something sharp and floral that lingered like smoke. Balloons shifted above us, as if the ceiling itself was holding its breath. My mother-in-law walked to the gift table with deliberate steps, her heels tapping against the floor in rhythm. She didn't even glance at Jason. She picked up the largest box first, wrapped in silver paper with a bow nearly the size of his head. Turning back toward the crowd, she smiled wide and said, "I think Sarah should open this one." A ripple of confusion ran through the table. Jason's hands paused mid-air, his smile flickering. Sarah laughed, brushing her hair over her shoulder as the box landed in front of her. She tore into it with practiced ease, ribbons snapping, paper shredding. The sound grated against my ears, louder than the clinking forks and the squeals of children. Jason whispered, "But that's mine." His voice was small, barely audible under the noise. I heard it. My chest tightened. Box after box followed. My mother-in-law worked quickly, like a dealer passing cards, stacking them in front of Sarah. "Here, this looks perfect for you. And this one too. Sarah, you'll love it." Her words were syrupy, but her eyes flicked past me, sharp and deliberate. Someone at the far end murmured, "Aren't those Jason's?" My mother-in-law straightened her back. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "These are family gifts. We share. Sarah knows how to represent us. Represent us." The phrase echoed in my head like a gavel striking wood. Jason's face crumpled in confusion. He looked from me to the growing pile in front of his aunt. His small hands tightened around the toy car he already had, knuckles whitening. He didn't cry, not yet, but the silence around him screamed louder than any sob. I wanted to shout, to grab the boxes back, to demand, "This is his day." Instead, I stayed still. My fork dug into the paper plate, leaving little crescent moons in the flimsy plastic. My smile stayed frozen, polite, immovable. My heart, though, beat so hard it felt like it might rattle the table itself. Sarah basked in the glow, tossing bows over her shoulder, laughing with each reveal. A sweater, a puzzle, a Lego set Jason had been dreaming of for months. She held it up for the room to see, and people clapped half-heartedly, eyes darting to Jason. My mother-in-law beamed, her hand on Sarah's shoulder like a queen crowning her heir. My husband sat rigid, his eyes fixed on his napkin, folding and refolding it. He didn't look at me, didn't look at his son. The cowardice was almost worse than the humiliation. Around us, relatives shifted uncomfortably, some pretending not to notice, others glancing at me with pity they wouldn't dare voice aloud. "See, Jason doesn't mind sharing," my mother-in-law declared, as if speaking for him. Jason's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked at me again, desperate, searching. I met his gaze and gave him the smallest nod, a signal I hoped he understood. "Hold on." The sound of tearing paper blurred into a dull roar in my ears. My pulse thudded in time with each gift stripped away. My lips felt dry, but I forced them into a smile so wide it nearly split my face. I reached for my glass, took a sip of water so cold it shocked my throat, and let the ice burn anchor me. Every sense was heightened. I smelled the frosting drying on the half-cut cake. I heard the faint squeak of shoes from a waiter shifting behind me. I saw the way Sarah's bracelets clinked each time she raised her hands in triumph. All of it etched into memory, a tableau of humiliation. And then came the final insult. My mother-in-law picked up the smallest package, wrapped in blue paper with uneven tape. Jason's best friend had brought it, saved his allowance to buy a little toy robot. Instead of handing it to Jason, she slid it across the table to Sarah. "Open this one too. I'm sure it'll suit you." Something in me went still. Not broken, not shattered, still, like the air before lightning. I glanced at Jason. His shoulders slumped, his toy car slipping from his hand onto the floor with a faint clatter. No one bent to pick it up. Not even my husband. That was the moment the party turned. Not visibly, not yet. Outwardly, it was still laughter and clapping, and Sarah's smile flashing like a billboard. But inside me, a decision hardened. I didn't stand. I didn't scream. I simply set down my glass, folded my napkin with care, and waited, because sometimes silence is louder than a shout. And sometimes the most devastating response isn't fury. It's composure sharpened to a blade. The room buzzed with chatter, but in my head, there was only one thought. This party wasn't over yet. The noise of paper ripping blurred into the background, but my mind had already shifted gears. Every laugh, every clap for Sarah, felt like static on a broken radio. Jason sat beside me, shoulders heavy, eyes lowered to the floor. My mother-in-law basked in the spotlight, her hand never leaving Sarah's arm, as if she were presenting her prize pony. That was when I noticed the waiter hovering near the drink station, balancing a tray of empty glasses. His eyes flicked toward me, hesitant, as if he sensed the tension seeping from our table. I took a slow sip of water, set the glass down, and lifted my hand ever so slightly. He caught the signal and came over. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he whispered, leaning closer. I smiled, the kind of smile you wear in church or at a funeral, polite and unreadable. I slipped my card from my purse and pressed it into his hand. "Put everything on her," I said quietly, nodding toward my mother-in-law. "Every plate, every drink, the cake, the balloons, everything." His brows rose just a fraction, but he didn't argue. He tucked the card away and gave the smallest nod, the kind of nod that promised he would play along. For the first time that day, my chest loosened. From that moment, I no longer heard the chatter about Sarah's sweater or the gasps over the Lego set. My ears tuned to a different rhythm, the countdown. 10 minutes until dessert plates. 20 minutes until the bill. 30 minutes until silence. Jason nudged me gently, his small voice breaking through. "Mom, can we go home soon?" His eyes shimmered, not quite tears, but close enough to sting my heart. I smoothed his hair and whispered back, "Almost, sweetheart. Just a little longer." I didn't want him to see me seethe. I wanted him to see me steady, calm, in control. The relatives kept clapping, though the sound had thinned. Some of them avoided my gaze altogether, too cowardly to acknowledge the cruelty unfolding at the table. My husband sat stiff, his jaw tight, but not a word escaped him. He folded and unfolded his napkin, each crease sharper than the last. I wondered if he even noticed the way his son's joy had drained away like spilled soda on the tablecloth. Finally, the last ribbon fluttered to the floor. Sarah sat surrounded by towers of opened boxes, a queen on her throne of other people's generosity. My mother-in-law clapped her hands together like the curtain had closed on a successful play. "That's enough for now," she announced, patting Sarah's shoulder. "We'll sort the rest later." Jason's toy car still lay forgotten on the floor. I bent down, picked it up, and pressed it gently back into his hand. He looked at me, confused, searching for something I couldn't give him yet. I kissed his forehead and stood. The server approached, polite as ever, and placed the folded bill on the table. My mother-in-law reached for it without hesitation, her smile never faltering. But when she opened it, I saw the shift, the brief flicker in her eyes, the tightening of her mouth. $2,000. Food, drinks, decorations, everything under her name. "What is this?" she snapped, voice sharp enough to cut the laughter out of the room. I leaned back in my chair, tilting my glass in her direction. "The bill," I said simply. "It's your party, after all. You should have the honor." The silence that followed was thick. Forks paused midair. Even Sarah's giggle caught in her throat. My husband froze, staring at the table like he could will himself invisible. My mother-in-law's face reddened. "This isn't my responsibility. I didn't agree to this." I kept my tone light, almost casual. "You arranged everything. You decided who the star of the show was. You represented the family today, didn't you? Well, this is part of it." Jason shifted closer to me, his little hand wrapping around mine under the table. His grip was strong, desperate, as if he understood more than anyone gave him credit for. The relatives exchanged looks, whispers buzzing like bees. Some of them smirked, Others hid their smiles behind napkins. For once, I wasn't the only one watching her squirm. My mother-in-law slammed the bill down, rattling the plates. "This is outrageous," she hissed. I stood, smoothing my dress, my hand still holding Jason's. "No, what's outrageous is stealing a child's birthday and pretending it was for the good of the family." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The calm in my tone was sharper than any scream. Jason looked up at me, eyes wide, a hint of pride breaking through his sadness. And for the first time that day, I felt like I had given him something he could carry. Not toys, not wrapping paper. Dignity. I thanked the server on the way out, leaving the chatter and protests behind. Jason clutched my hand, his toy car pressed between his fingers like a treasure. As the door closed behind us, I caught one last glimpse of the table. My mother-in-law's face twisted in frustration, the bill still lying open like a verdict she couldn't escape. And I walked away, knowing silence, when wielded right, can be the loudest weapon in the room. The restaurant door shut behind us with a soft thud, muffling the chaos still buzzing inside. For the first time all afternoon, the air felt clean, crisp. I drew in a deep breath, almost shaky, and glanced down at Jason. His small hand was wrapped tightly around mine, the toy car pressed between his fingers, as if it were the last piece of his birthday that still belonged to him. He didn't say anything at first, neither did I. We just walked across the parking lot, weaving between cars, still glistening with late afternoon sunlight. I could hear laughter leaking faintly from the banquet room behind us, though now it was strained, jagged at the edges. My mother-in-law's voice carried even through the walls, sharp, demanding, while relatives scrambled to calm her. Jason tugged at my hand. "Mom," he said softly, "did I do something wrong?" My chest cracked. I knelt down right there between two parked cars, eye level with him. His brown eyes searched mine, wide and unsure. "No, sweetheart," I whispered. "You did everything right. This wasn't about you." He looked down at his shoes, scuffed from running earlier. "But Grandma gave all the gifts to Aunt Sarah." I brushed his cheek with my thumb. "That's because Grandma doesn't always see things clearly, but that doesn't change the truth. Today was your day, and you're still the most important person to me." His shoulders relaxed a little. He nodded, clutching the toy car closer to his chest. I stood, smoothed his shirt, and opened the car door for him. As he climbed in, I couldn't help noticing the faint smudge of frosting still clinging to his collar. A reminder of the cake he had blown candles on with so much hope. Driving home, the silence in the car was thick, but different from the silence at the table. This one wasn't heavy with humiliation. It was quiet like a reset, like we were both trying to figure out what came next. Jason stared out the window, watching the scenery blur by, his reflection faint against the glass. I thought about the faces I had left behind. My husband, sitting motionless, unable to choose between his mother and his son. Sarah, surrounded by a mountain of gifts she didn't earn. My mother-in-law, red-faced, clutching the bill like it was a betrayal carved on paper. And me, walking out, not screaming, not begging, just leaving. There was power in that. A power I hadn't felt in years. When we got home, Jason ran straight to his room, shutting the door behind him. A moment later, I heard the faint whir of the toy car rolling across his desk. That sound, plastic wheels on wood, was the purest part of the day. I sat alone in the kitchen, the overhead light buzzing faintly. My phone lit up 3 times in a row. Husband, mother-in-law, an unknown number, I guessed was Sarah. I didn't answer. I let the screen glow and fade, glow and fade. The silence felt better. An hour later, Jason padded into the kitchen in his socks. He climbed onto my lap, heavier now than when he was little, but still curling into me like he used to. "Mom," he whispered. "Thank you." "For what?" I asked, stroking his hair. "For not letting her win." My throat tightened. I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the scent of shampoo and sugar, and held him until his breathing slowed. That night, as I tucked him into bed, he placed the toy car on his nightstand like a trophy. "Next year," he said sleepily. "Can we just have a cake at home?" "Yes," I promised. "Next year, it will just be us." He drifted off, his little hand still resting on mine. I walked back to the kitchen, phone buzzing again with unanswered calls. I didn't pick up. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and stared out at the street lamps flickering against the dark. I wondered what was happening back at the restaurant. Was my mother-in-law still shouting? Was Sarah embarrassed now that the spotlight had turned harsh? Were relatives whispering, weighing sides they had avoided for years? The truth is, I didn't care, because something shifted that night. Not just in the balance of a family dinner, but inside me. For once, I hadn't folded. I hadn't swallowed it down. I had drawn a line, quietly, without theatrics. Would my mother-in-law ever understand what she lost? Not just money, not just dignity in front of her friends, but the illusion of control she had clung to for so long. Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. All I knew was that I walked away with my son's hand in mine, and that mattered more than any stack of wrapped boxes or receipts. I set down my glass, the condensation leaving a faint circle on the table. My phone buzzed again, insistent. I ignored it, turning off the ringer. The house was silent now, except for Jason's steady breathing down the hall. I let that sound fill me, anchor me. I don't know if my mother-in-law realized it in that moment, but the truth was simple. She hadn't just lost face at a party. She had lost something far greater, and I wasn't sure she would ever get it back.